You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to Story Struck Podcast. So today I will be sharing some notes I have for you about the 5 different writer personalities. And I will have this developed into a quiz. So I will be going over the questions and things today. But I will have a full-fledged PDF, Virgo Energy and Me, that you guys can download so you can actually go through the quiz and you can get much more in-depth feedback than kind of the light way I will touch on it in today's episode. So essentially, I developed the writer personalities when I was thinking about writer's block because, as Nino knows, being a writing coach, and then me working with people in editing and I have to go back and rewrite, there is no one single cause to writer's block. It seems to be there are as many types of writer's block as there are people, and I started to notice themes. And I wanted to take a slightly different take on that as well, because when we think of writer's block, we think of it as there is something wrong with us, there's a hang up we have, it's very negative. But I've also found that what causes your writer's block is also what makes you an amazing writer. And so I have like this twofold system with the writer personalities where we're looking at how our personality is at the same time our superpower and also our kryptonite, and
I'm
how can
excited
we
about
work around
this.
that. Yeah, it was really cool developing it.
Like, as you know, my identification is like birth charts and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like when I have a client, I'm like, what's your zodiac stuff? And so like I know that if you're a Virgo, I'm like, okay, let's work on having structure, but we're really focusing on
Yes.
balancing it with flexibility and intuition and that type of thing. Or if I have an Aquarius, I'm like, okay, so how are we innovating with this stuff? And
Yes.
while also being something that is approachable for the reader, how can we find that balance? And I'm like looking at ways based on their astrology how they can balance. And if I can get really into it and like do like actual birth chart analysis for people and like, okay, so based on your birth chart, these are your writing things, which I've recently started to develop, which is really, really cool. But your things are more like archetypal, and I'm really, really excited to be your guinea pig on this episode. And I'm like, okay, so just based on your names, like I'm like, okay, I think I know where I'm going to land, but I'm gonna find out if I'm right.
Yeah, and I bet you're going to see a lot of those parts from astrology pop into these as well. Because, archetypes, they are overarching and we see pieces of archetypes across all different types of stuff. So, yeah, this is kind of like the psychology aspect, but there's definitely, you're going to see some of the astrology points in there to be like, these archetypes are these signs.
Yeah, like, I mean, astrology is just archetypal piece, it's just a mirror, astrology is just a mirror, just like Myers-Briggs is a mirror, or, it's a reflective tool for us to use to kind of introspect and stuff. So I'm a big fan of archetypes because, also a big fan of mythology, and mythology is just a bunch of archetypes, right? So big fan, super excited. Let's go.
And I will also note that you may find that you have aspects of different archetypes. So you'll have one that will probably be your primary, and then you may see bits and pieces of yourself in the other ones. And we can learn and do so much by borrowing bits and bobs from the other archetypes. So I definitely think it's really neat to see wow, I'm primary this, but I definitely see this in there too. Because then you'll see where you hit snags and superpowers.
Yeah, like what Maite was talking about on her episode, for episode 2 this season, about like your brand archetypes. It's just like, we are not just cookie cutter anything, And so, like sun, moon, and rising, that's what we do whenever we're like doing astrology things. Like, okay, here's the basics. What's your sun, moon, and rising? Because like we're not just in one little box.
Exactly. And as you say that, I can see the 2 archetypes I have and which one is the sun and moon, like my 2 different ones, because they are actually like polar opposites, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So all right. So I'm just going to kind of give a brief overview of what the 5 archetypes are, and then I'm going to take Nino through the 7 questions. We'll see where you land, and then we will dive into each of the archetypes a little bit deeper. All right, so my 5 archetypes are the Weaver, the Artisan, the Flamekeeper, the Hidden Scribe, and the Seeker. So the Weaver is because, like, right, I have looms if you're watching behind me. The Weaver is very structured. Putting together something on the loom, we have to be hyper conscious of, is this going to be strong enough? What pattern am I following? Right? Like, you have to have everything planned out from start to finish, or you're going to run out of the materials that you need to finish your pattern, or the pattern's going to have like holes in it. So we're like, all right, I'm going to have this all drawn out, mapped out. I know what I'm doing every single step of the way. So that is the Weaver. The Artisan, I like to think of like people who are making artisan bread. So there is a bit of art to it, but there's also still structure to it because they want to make sure that the crumb on the crust has like that right little tap when you tap it. It has the air bubbles in there. So there's a science to it, but there's also an art to it. So they're wanting to make sure all of these pieces are coming together to make this beautiful, delicious artisan bread that someone's going to slice open and be like, wow. Then we
Now I'm
have the
hungry.
Flamekeeper. Now you're hungry. I know right now, like I want to go to the store and get some fresh bread. Oh my God, I love bread. Then we have the Flamekeeper, and the Flamekeeper is just full of all of this creative, fiery energy. It makes me think of the Tarot of the Wands, which is all about creativity and flow and keeping things going because you have to keep feeding and stoking a fire to keep the fire alive. So, and if you try to put too much on the fire, then it doesn't have enough room to breathe and it kind of fizzles out. So that is our Flamekeeper. Our Hidden Scribe, they are kind of lurking in the shadows. They're like, I might be a writer. I think I am, but I'm not really sure because I see like this person here, it's written this many books. And like when I heard this person read this sample at the critique group, like they're a writer and I'm really not. So the Hidden Scribe, they're a writer, but they don't yet believe they're a writer. So they kind of got some things going on there.
I know lots of those.
Yes, you see that a lot. I feel like we all have a little bit of that. That's kind of like that imposter syndrome creeping in. And then the last one is the Seeker. So the Seeker is truly trying to find themselves within their writing. So they may be following all of the guidance from this and that, doing these writing exercises, and just kind of feeling like their writing isn't necessarily theirs. They're like, I read this and it's just okay. But like, if I read Stephen King, I can tell Stephen King wrote that, right? Like, they're like, I can hear his voice in everything he does. And mine just kind of sounds like no one, or it sounds like the like author that I just read a book on. Now I sound like I'm writing like them. So that's the Seeker. They're trying to find themselves, find their voice. So we'll get into kind of how those are both that positive, negative superpower kryptonite for all of us.
Everyone has everything has a shadow and light side. Okay, I wrote down the ones that I think that I am, and so I've written them down, and we're gonna take the test, and we'll see if I'm right.
Okay. So we have 7 questions. Our first one is, what happens when you sit down to write? So A, I open my planning doc and try to figure out if I'm doing it right. B, I get stuck rewriting the same sentence and don't get anywhere. C, I get a new idea and suddenly feel more excited about that. D, I feel like a fraud and wonder who would even want to read this. Or E, I write a few lines and cringe because it doesn't sound like me.
C, because I am an idea machine.
And I do encourage you to, like, as you guys are going through and taking the quiz, if you resonate with more than one, like, kind of write it out. Like, you know, my primary one is C, but damn, I also feel like blah, blah, blah. And then you can kind of see, like, where your primary one falls and where maybe you might have, like, a strong secondary personality that pops in there. Because in writing, nothing wrong with having multiple personalities here. Question 2. What do you need before you start a writing session? A flawless outline or roadmap. I just can't wing it. B, the perfect first paragraph, and if it is not polished, I cannot move forward. C, a wave of inspiration strong enough to carry me through. D, for my inner critic to take a nap or maybe a long vacation. Or E, a sense of connection to what I'm writing. It has to feel like mine.
I'm gonna say C, sometimes E.
Oh, okay. I like it. All right. So, number 3, what derails you once you've started writing? A, second guessing every plot twist, structure choice, or world building concept. B, the urge to edit what you've already written instead of writing new stuff. C, staying locked into this one story or project feels overwhelming or maybe a little bit boring. D, one wrong sentence can convince me that I'm in over my head. Or E, my writing starts sounding like a mashup of every book I've ever read.
So C again, but also sometimes B.
Ooh, okay. I like it. All right, question 4. How do you feel when you think about finishing a draft? Are you A, nervous that you'll miss something big and the story will fall apart? B, like it's never going to be ready. There's too many typos and dialogue tags to fix. C, LOL, finish. I've already started thinking about my next story. D, freaked out because there is so much that still needs to be done before you'll be a real writer. Or E, a little disconnected. You're not sure the final draft even sounds like you're writing anymore.
Again, C, but also sometimes B.
Okay. All right. So, question 5. How do you feel when someone wants to read your work? A, you worry they'll find flaws in the structure. B, panicked because how can I show it before it's perfect? C, embarrassed because you've usually moved on to a new idea by then. D, terrified, what if they realize I don't know what I'm doing? Or E, nervous that they'll say it doesn't sound original.
B.
Okay, 2 more questions. Question 6, what do you admire most in other writers? A, how they weave everything together and nothing feels random. B, their control. Every sentence feels sculpted like they've been blah blah blah, like it couldn't have been written any other way. C, their ability to create rich characters and worlds that you want to visit again and again. D, that they aren't afraid to share their work, but it's also feels like it's better than yours. Or E, if you read a random page with no context, you could tell who wrote it.
B.
Okay.
I am like all about those sentences that feel like they're sculpted. I'm like, yes.
Yes. All right. And the last one is what would finally make you feel like a real writer? A, knowing your draft or finishing a draft, knowing everything connects the way it's supposed to. B, reading your pages without immediately wanting to fix something. C, staying focused on one story idea long enough to finish it. D, sharing something you wrote and not immediately wanting to hide. Or E, someone saying, I knew it was you, I could hear your voice in the writing.
C.
All right. Let me stop sharing my screen and we will chat about your results and then we will go
Can
into
you
the
tell I have
personalities
ADHD?
even more. All right. So, your primary writing personality is the flame keeper. So you keep that flame going. You need that creative energy. You need that space to keep the flame fanning. And then your sub personality is the artisan. So you're wanting to have that combination, right, of that creativity, but wanting to draw in a little bit of that structure to help kind of form it together into that beautiful, tasty bread that you can't wait to bite into.
Yep.
So I thought that was really fun,
Because
like
that is what I
those
wrote down.
combinations you had.
I'm
Is that
like,
what you thought too?
yeah, the torch one, the fire one, like that one for
Yeah.
sure. And then also the artisan, because I'm like, I want it all to be a work of art. And I know that in order for it to be a work of art, I have to have some like the themes, right? Like I was just doing that word vomit to you this morning about my book. Like gotta have something that like goes forward. So I have to plan. I gotta have that structure to it, but I
Yeah.
also has to sound beautiful. Like it has like that's why I'm like with line editing, I'm going back and like having those beautifully sculpted sentences. I want it to sound like poetry in story, like that lyrical
Yes.
tone. So yeah, I'm like, as soon as I heard your description, I'm like, yep, I know my two.
Yep. Well, with that, why don't we start with your two personalities and then we can go through the other ones? So we'll start with the Flame Keeper. So, and this is something like I so know about you. So I was like, I was not surprised to see where these would go. So, like with being the Flame Keeper, you live for that rush and that creative tingle of new ideas. Like, you don't just write, you fall in love with your writing and your stories over and over again. And this can help you really move forward quickly. Um, However, right, there's that other side of getting that other idea, that other tangent can kind of make you get off track and you move quickly with that. And then you need to get back to the other story.
Mhm.
But kind of as I was talking about before, it's you're keeping that flame going and that flame needs space. It needs air. So when you have all of this stuff bogged down, right? Like you have the research, you have thinking about this, realizing maybe I need to do something else with this plot. Like all of these things start adding up. It's overtaking the fire that you have burning, and there's not enough air getting in to feed the fire. And so when those moments are happening, that's when you have maybe another idea that comes and you have something that feels easier, it feels freer, the spark is going and catching light. And so sometimes you do need to step away with that personality to be able to then come back. Otherwise, you're keeping yourself stuck in that block because there's not enough fuel or oxygen getting in to fuel your fire. So it's not necessarily a focus problem, it's a
Mhm.
passion problem. So what are you
And
thinking about that so far?
so, like, the thing you talked about with space, it really,
Hmm.
really resonates with me because I always feel like when I am super busy with work, with life, like, freaking December and January were just like everyone was sick at some point somebody was sick, whether it's
Yeah.
me or my son. My son had everything this freaking season. It's ridiculous. But so like that space, or whenever I was homeschooling my son, right? Like it was overwhelming. I didn't have the space. And I need
Hmm.
that space, that quiet and that like availability, that lack of like that pressure of like, well, you only have from here to here and then you have this to do and like I need that space to allow for my creativity to breathe. Like you said, like that
Yeah.
sentence about that space to breathe, that space for that oxygen to come in, like that feels like so absolutely complete and true for my experience with writing, like so much so that I literally have time designated just for journaling so I can give myself some space for whatever comes in. And I'll get story ideas. Like, I got a I have a
Oh, yeah.
TBW, right? Like some people have a TBR. I got that too. But instead of a TBR, I have a TBW of 15 books that I have already planned out. I'm like literally still working on the trilogy. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
that's outside of the trilogy. There's 15
Yeah.
outside of the trilogy that I'm currently working on. Like, because it's always the ideas. So that just really 100%. And I literally had that issue whenever I was editing, because editing doesn't have that same creative spark for me. And I was getting that creative
Yes.
itch, and I started another freaking book. I started writing a whole nother freaking book. And then my editing was completely distracted, and I went like 3 months without editing a single thing in my book because I got distracted by the new shiny thing, which again, ADHD, shiny thing distraction, you know? And so that just like completely accurate. And I had to like put down that other book so I could focus on my editing. But then I realized I need to find something to continue working with my creative fuel. So I started drawing again. So I'm like, that's my creative act now while I'm editing and stuff,
I like
because the
that.
editing just doesn't have as much, and it's just like it builds up, and I just it's like that fire wants to either go out or explode. I don't know. So yeah, completely accurate.
Awesome. And I love how you mentioned too that you have another creative outlet, right? It doesn't always have to be writing. Sometimes your brain needs a break from the writing. So, whatever
Mhm.
that outlet is for you, maybe that's going for walks, reading a book, watching some TV, like doing something with your family, whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be all writing all the time. That can be very suffocating and take out that creative juice.
Right.
So, and that's kind of leading into how I would help you unlock your full potential with that. And right, following a way to like stay committed and curious without killing the joy, and not trying to force it. So I have like on my little thing that finishing isn't about forcing, it's about rekindling the connection. And that's exactly what you've been doing with your stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I
Yeah.
do have a creative exercise that maybe you would
Oh,
enjoy to try
yeah.
when you're having one of those moments. So, try writing a love letter from your main character to you, the writer. What do they love about their story? And what are they excited or nervous about for what's coming ahead?
Oh,
And kind of like, yeah, so have them write that to you, and then maybe you write back to them, and you get this
yeah.
dialogue going back and forth with one of your characters in the book. And you could do that at any point for a main character, a minor character, just to kind of have like this fun, almost instant gratification, creative thing that you're doing as well.
I love that. It reminds me of like whenever, remember whenever you were like having that issue with your book, and I'm like, well, why don't you just like talk to your character?
Yes.
Just like sit
Yes.
down and
And
have
that
a
was
little
so
moment with your
powerful.
main character. Yeah, it was like, and it kind of like it reminds me of it, but like having the letter is a little bit more approachable for those of our listeners that are not as um woo woo and
Yeah.
spiritual and stuff as we are. So I think that's a great idea. Because I mean, all of our
Yes.
characters just live in our head, so why not just have a conversation with them, right? So I love
Exactly.
that.
And then you're getting words down on a page. And so then you feel like you've done some writing towards your book. So,
Ooh,
right? So it's kind
right?
of like multi-layered, and you may find a bit of your maybe your character's personality. How did they write to you? Like, are you getting like maybe a little inspiration for a nuance of like, ooh, when they speak, this is actually their voice, and maybe I haven't been giving them their true voice in the story. But also don't get hung up on that. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be beautiful. You know, they could even write you one word, one sentence to you, and then write back to them, and then just kind of have fun and play with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that.
All right, so now for your second sub personality here of the artisan. So for you, like, and this so reminds me of you too, because the artisan, like, you don't want to just write, you want to craft elegantly, and you have an eye for rhythm, tone, cadence. When something doesn't sound right to the ear, it throws you off. And I know, like, your background in like music and singing, like, that just instantly made me
Mm-hmm.
think of that, and poetry too, right? Like, poetry for you is very lyrical. And
Mm-hmm.
like you can hear the cadence, like especially in like spoken poetry, right? You feel the flow in it. So as soon as you were starting to do the things on there, I'm like, yeah, that's so you.
Right? Like, yeah, that's so important to me to have it. Like, I have to be beautiful, right? Like I
Yes.
point to like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a great example of like the type of work that I feel like is in the category that I'm working in and stuff. And so like that first paragraph that I wrote in that I had sent you and stuff like that, I'm like, this is the template for the entire
Yep.
book. Like this kind of rhythm and cadence and use of metaphor and stuff like this is what I want throughout the whole thing. I love a good metaphor. I love,
Oh yeah.
like instead of saying it just flat out saying it pretty, like I obviously don't have an example right now because I have a headache, but it's just like it's so important to me. And like if I read a book, like I can like, peg one book in particular. I knew everything that was going to happen in the story. The story was a very predictable story and stuff, but I still loved the book because it was like the lyrical writing of the book, it's called The Honey Witch, was so beautiful that it felt like it was massaging my ears as I was listening to it because I
Yeah.
was listening to it on audio. And it was just like it's soothing to the soul to have something beautiful to read or to listen to it with books and stuff. And it's so important to me. Obviously, I'm gonna stop talking about it now.
But yeah, really, that's right. You can see that this is definitely something that passion is passionate for you. I had a line in here that also makes me think of you is that when you're in flow, your prose sparkles. And when you've had those flow moments of stuff and you've sent it back to me, like, this just came to me, I'm like, oh my God, that's freaking gorgeous. Right. And then when
Yeah.
you're trying to force it and like, right, your flame is dampened and you're trying to force the writing, it doesn't feel like it's as lyrical, as flowing. It's
Right.
just kind of
It's
like,
like, let's get it
you
out.
know?
We know the pieces, like, let's get it out and stuff, but and I have so many
Yes.
pieces on my book where I'm like, "Okay, you know what? We're just getting it down. We'll go back and line edits and make it pretty and stuff." And so I'm
Yeah,
like, "Okay, so now once I get to the line edits of it all, it's like then I have to really create that space, really find that flow in it in order to sculpt the work, which I'm excited for, but
exactly.
also a little nervous about."
So yeah, like with someone who this is their like primary personality, getting hung up on that stage, like for you, you're able to be like, okay, I can go back and make this pretty later. If this was like your primary personality, that's kind of where you might hit that snag point because you care so much about the rhythm and keeping it going and like, wow, this section really flowed beautiful. And then this feels like utter trash that then you stop and you want to go back and you want to revise that so it sounds as beautiful and pretty as this other section. So you keep like stopping and going and stopping and going. And it's not necessarily procrastination. You're trying to shape it so it all sounds fabulous from the start. But that perfectionism kind of, you become your own gatekeeper and your inner critic and inner editor is stopping you from being able to move forward. And I think this is really important when we think about editing because when we see books or we see something that a person sharing at a critique group, if you're the artisan, you may think, wow, they did this their very first go because you've had those moments where stuff just goes and flows and it's, oh, it's so pretty. So when you see someone else sharing something and you're like, wow, my other stuff here does not sound good, doesn't sound like that, but their work sounds beautiful, you start to then kind of second guess yourself and your perfectionism kind of gets in the way. So just kind of remembering that but before work is shown to other people, it's going through many stages of editing. And if you spend all of your time trying to perfect every single thing you've written before you write something else, you are doing yourself a disservice because you're going to be changing so much after you get that first zero draft, right? Or fuck around and find out draft. As soon as
Yeah.
you get that draft done, you're going back and changing a lot. So don't give yourself extra work. You'll be able to fix that later. And so that's kind of goes along with my thing of separating writing from revising. And kind of keeping that mindset that you're being creative, not critical as you're working through it right now. So this is my suggested activity for someone who is going through this is to write one page without using the backspace key without using your mouse to go back and fix anything and have any kind of autocorrect shut off, whether that's Grammarly, the auto suggest, whatever kind of thing you have in your system, you have that off. And when you are done, read it aloud, but don't change anything yet. And I just want you to notice what is working within there and also what is not working. And I think you'll be surprised that more is working in there than you thought when you shut off that critical side of your brain.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, whenever people first start writing, that is such a common hill to struggle with. It's just like, oh, going back and revising things
Hmm.
or overthinking or being like, oh, this isn't like, the idea of like being reader ready from the very first run around. Like
Yeah.
we all wrote essays in school. Not a single one of us had an essay that was perfect and ready to turn in the first time. That's why our teachers took us through, okay, this is your rough draft, and you're going to submit your rough draft. Then we're going to polish that, and we're going to do, like, that's why we did that in school. Why would your creative writing be any different? Like,
Yes.
but
Yes.
so many of us get so stuck on that because we look at these authors that we really look up to, and we're like, oh, this just popped out of their head like it was nothing. And no, it freaking didn't. No, it didn't. And
Yeah,
so finding your process with it is so important.
definitely. All right. So now we'll move on to the weaver, which, as you can guess with my many looms, I am primarily the weaver.
Energy.
Shocker, I know. Oh my God. So, if you're a weaver like me, plot holes beware because your superpower is being an architect of story magic. You're always thinking like 5 scenes, 5 books ahead, right? Like you are like
Yeah,
laying out the
literally, you
land.
have 5 books planned for your thing.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, this book that was supposed to be like this one thing, it is literally like a whole multiple series. So yeah, and I'm like, all right, I can't like and see this is where I have that dual edge, right? I'm thinking, oh my God, I have this beautiful structure, but I'm like, I can't start writing book 1 because I know this arc is going over multiple books. So I need to at least hash out lightly what the arc will be for all of the books across so then I can work backwards, right? We get in our own way. Unless, if you're a weaver, but you enjoy solving those story puzzles. Like it's fun to you getting into the systems. You like that clarity and logic and flow. And when you sit down and you start writing, you want everything to just click and just go. But this is where you can stall your own progress because you want everything to connect and flow. Starting feels impossible because you always think of one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. And then that thing you think of, ooh, but that changes what I did like 4 chapters back or, in the next plot point. So I got to go and rearrange all of these. So it can become this never-ending cycle, but this overthinking, it's how your brain protects your brilliance. And you need to trust the process so that you can move forward and be okay with not having all of the answers. You just need a solid structure to get yourself started. Just kind of think, right, if we're building a house, we need to have that solid structure. We need to have those bare bones done before we can start interior decorating. We can't start, we can't map out the whole interior decorating of this house yet because we may discover that, this room, we actually need a load-bearing wall here, so that's going to change how this goes. Where if we did that whole interior decorating and then we discovered we needed to move the load-bearing wall, we're going to have to redo that whole interior decorating. So we're making a lot more work for ourselves. But at least if you have that solid structure, you have that safe container to explore your ideas and kind of giving yourself permission to move forward before it's perfect because ideas and stories will always evolve, right? Like the way you started your book is not the way you thought your book was going to go, right?
No, it changed a lot. It changed a lot. And, you have to have those fuck around and find out drafts in order
Yeah.
to figure out where it wants to go and stuff. And then, I was doing it a totally different way. Like if you were approaching this, you would have learned all the mythology first, then
Yeah.
done all the plotting of everything first, realized it was 3 books before you even started your full first draft of it. And I did it all at the same time. So like the editing process for me, so I'm still in developmental editing and stuff because I just started writing stuff while I was still learning the mythology. I'm still learning the mythology. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of mythology to learn, And, just now I'm like, I'm adding a whole section right now to my book because I realized I need this foundation for this thing that's going to happen in book 3 that I didn't know was going to exist when I started this book.
Yeah.
And so it's like all over the place. So I end up spending a little bit more time in the editing space than probably you do. Like probably by the time you get to editing, you just like blast right through that because you had that front end. And it's like
Yeah.
about that balance, right? You're spending more time in the front end on the planning and development of things. Then once you get to the writing stage, you'll probably blast through that pretty easily and stuff. And then the same thing with the editing. And so all of this time that you're spending with the planning and plotting and stuff it's I think it all balances out once you
It
figure
all
out
balances out. Yeah.
once you learn how to like balance your archetype, that it all like it eventually like kind of comes together and stuff. But it's about like that awareness and finding where your balance lives.
Exactly. Like you're kind of channeling that Weaver energy now of finding these
I'm
different bits of
trying.
mythology and where are these going to fit in. So you're bringing that in now. And I know like I was always super jealous because like you had your finished draft and I'm like, I haven't even started writing yet. But for me, that's how my process works because like you said, once I have all of that done, for me, then the writing becomes easier because I already know where I'm going. So I'm filling in the spaces. And so for me, that helps. Those guide rails I actually find stimulating creatively. So I'm like, okay, how did I get from here to here? All right, I just have to do that small chunk. Then I go to the next part, getting from here to here. So that's kind of like my fun little way. But also it's helped me test drive my stories. And so that's kind of my little trick for these people, because originally I thought I was going to write a cozy mystery, and then it totally evolved, and I'm like, okay, this is like a multi-book dark fantasy, you know? So my suggestion, if you are a weaver, is to pick one scene or one story idea and do a tiny blueprint with just 3 things: the setting, the climax moment, and how the story ends. And then challenge yourself to write that one tiny little scene or that little flash fiction idea, and to write it messy, loose, and unplanned. And just see what happens for that one little thing. Just 500 words, teeny tiny. So, and that's kind of my challenge for myself this year, is to do some short story writing, some flash fiction writing, to help loosen up my weaver brain and just kind of have fun exploring. So that is the weaver. And now we will do the hidden scribe. So the hidden scribe, if this is your personality, you're feeling called to write, but somewhere between your ideas and getting them on the page, you're kind of freezing a little bit. And it's because you care so much that like pressure is overwhelming. So you might write a few lines and then delete them. You may like reread some books that you absolutely love or authors you love and wonder if you're ever going to be able to write like that, sound like that. Like you're not unmotivated. You are very motivated. You are just uncertain is kind of like the core part of the hidden scribe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like kind of like everything feels like too much. There's too many ideas. There's too much pressure. You don't have enough experience. What if you write wrong? Like there's like all of these things are coming at you. And the truth is for this is you're waiting for permission that nobody else can give you except yourself.
100%. And I think this is where a lot of writers start. I know this is where I started back
Yep.
in 2019. Actually, I just wrote this in my email newsletter for Writers Rebellion. So if you're not on that, you know where to find it. But I just wrote about that. Like this was me in 2019. I wanted to be a writer so bad, but I had dyslexia and didn't know it at the time, but I also had ADHD. And so I had these mindset blocks of like, but I can't write like that because I have dyslexia. Like, and I would try and write a book and I wouldn't be able to finish it. I tried writing so many books and I just wasn't able to finish them. And, from fiction to nonfiction, like, well, no, not even I tried a short story of a fiction one time and somebody trashed it. And I'm like, I gave up from there. Like, so that you have so many reasons to have all these like mindset blocks with it that it's like you get a failure to launch kind of moment. So this is something that my advice is, if you're identifying as this archetype right now, that um the fact that you want to be a writer, the fact that you feel called to be a writer means that this is meant for you. Means that you're built for this, because if you didn't want it, it wouldn't be meant for you, you know? And so that is your sign that this is the right path for you. That's my advice.
Yes. Yes. And I think you made a really good point there, because I feel like all writers at some point in their writing have been in these final 2 personalities at some point with the hidden scribe and the seeker. So I feel like these are ones that you may be at temporarily, and then you may bounce into one of the other ones as kind of your core writing personality. But yeah, like the hidden scribe, there's so much with imposter syndrome around with authors that we've talked about so much on season 1. So I believe we have like a whole episode on that. So definitely go check that out. And as you said, you don't have to earn the right to call yourself a writer. You are a writer. It's just a matter of you wanting to feel safe enough. But like you're braver than you think you are, because you're showing up. You're trying to write. You're actually care about writing, care about the process. So you are light years ahead of anyone else who says, I want to write a book and just says the words. So you definitely, like, you have so much potential. And then kind of you need to start working on building some self-trust on yourself. If you are feeling like the hidden scribe, NaNoWriMo is not what you want to do. All right. Those
I mean,
types
I
of
get
big
that's not
challenges.
really what you want to do anyway, because that's a it's a hard challenge for anyone to do and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and most of it is not really usable and stuff, and it's just if you're having any of those imposter syndrome pieces, any of that insecurity and stuff like that, that moment of not being able to complete it is just going to add fuel to your doubt. So
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Don't do NaNoWriMo
Exactly. Yeah.
if you're
Like
a hidden
kind of
scribe
say
especially.
no. Just say no, right? Like dare. Just say
Hmm.
no to these big challenges of plot your book in 30 days, like all of these things. I want all of my hidden scribes to focus on one small thing that's going to remind your brain that you can do this. You can still feel fear. That's totally cool, but you just need to find a safe place to start. So, my challenge is to set a 5-minute timer, and you're going to write just one line. All you have to write is one sentence that you are not going to delete. All right. It can be messy, weird, random. You can even, like, if you just get there and you're overwhelmed and, like, there's like 30 seconds left on the clock, write, I wrote one line. That's it. The only purpose of this line is to exist and to say, I showed up today. And that's what counts. And anytime that you have those moments, I want you to put your timer and just write one line, whatever it is. It can be, it's snowing today. You're a writer, you wrote a line. So that is my challenge for you, is just kind of give yourself something very small, very bite-sized, very doable to show yourself that you are a writer and that you showed up today.
Yeah, and when you're having this imposter syndrome, um, and then you look at the mountain of work that is a book, it can sometimes be too much too fast,
Hmm.
right? It's overwhelming. So taking it down into the smallest chunk possible. If you're like, no, I want to write this book. I have this book that I know I'm meant to write. I got to write this book. Chunking it down into the smallest chunk that feels so easily obtainable. What I did was I gave myself 500 words 5 days a week. That's it. That is all I'm doing. 500 words 5 days a week. It gives me flexibility for 2 days off wherever they happen to land, and it also gives me a marker that felt approachable for me. Granted, I was writing a lot because I was already a professional writer, but so 500 words felt super super easy for me. It felt like, oh my god, that's like 5 minutes to me, like it's no time at all. So because that task felt so easily obtainable, I was able to just like barrel through. And I have days I'm like 3,000 words. Oh yeah, that happened today. Woohoo, we had a good day, you know? And so that builds that momentum. And the more momentum you build, the easier it is for you to overcome these mindset hurdles and start overcoming that imposter syndrome of not being a writer, because if you're writing, you're a writer, period. I
Yeah.
don't care what the gatekeepers say of like, well, you're not published or it's not good or blah, 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 blah. I don't give a fuck. Like, if you are writing, you're a writer, period. Fight me.
Yes.
Like,
Hands down.
yeah. But you
Exactly.
gotta make it obtainable. And if writing a book feels too unobtainable, go for short stories. Write a
Yes.
poem. Try some flash fiction. Like, there's a lot of options where you can exercise that and start building up that tolerance. I started with poetry. So like me writing 3 stanzas, I could do that. And now I'm at 100,000 words in a book, you know? Like,
Yeah, when I got started and I was in school, I did a collection of flash fiction. I wrote one little clip of a comic strip. Like they had just had us do little tiny things for projects. I wrote just an opening couple pages of a script for a pilot episode of a TV show, and that has fueled a project I'm working on this year for some short story writing. So, like, just these little tiny moments of inspiration can lead to all different types of things. So, yes, if you wrote that one sentence, congrats, you're a writer. So, believe in yourself and you can do this, I promise. And then our last personality that we have is the seeker. So, the seeker is always curious. You may be a little bit intuitive, you're always wanting to learn, and you just want to soak it all up. When you read something that's absolutely brilliant. You love it. Like, Nino, you're talking about the Honey Witch. Like, when you read something like that, you're like, ooh, can I write like that too? And you want to have that. But that's kind of where you get a little bit snagged up, because when you're writing, you're feeling like my writing feels generic, flat, feels like just a mashup of stuff. Like you feel like your voice isn't necessarily there because it's been buried underneath everything you've absorbed. You're trying to be this chameleon and integrate all of these different things, but you've done such a good job of absorption that you're buried underneath because you're trying to be everybody else. And I think we all go through that. But being a sponge and soaking all of this in is also awesome because you are so aware of tone, rhythm, storycraft, and you're open and wired for like creativity, but you're having a challenge when it comes to translating that on the page. So my big thing for when you're like this and you feel like you're echoing other voices, is to know that you're not a copy. You are just drawn to great writing. And they actually teach you this in like MFA programs and things like that. Maybe some classes you guys will see is they will have you experiment writing like other authors to try on their styles and their voices so you can kind of see how it feels to write a certain way. Just kind of thinking like poetry, right? There's so many different types of poetry that maybe you're trying to write the same poem as a haiku, and then you're going to try and write that same theme of a poem in a lyrical poem. They're going to come out totally different. They're going to feel different. And you might be like, you know what? I loved writing this long, fluid thing for this lyrical poem, but condensing that down into the haiku, like, wow, that felt powerful. And so you're learning about yourself as you're testing out these different types of writing and these different writing styles. You're collecting all of these different voices and trying to sound right. Like, I have to sound this way because that's what a real writer sounds like. That's the trouble zone because you are erasing the voice that is yours when you're doing that. So like another thing I think is like, so we talked about how writers learn, but also think about how painters learn. They learn by painting paintings that are famous, because they are learning the skills underneath. And then once they do that, they then start to experiment and find their artistic style. And that is essentially what you are doing. So your voice isn't lost, it's just lost under all of these layers. But your sensitivity to that tone is your superpower. And same thing, right, where we're talking with the flame keeper, where you need space to breathe to fan it up. That kind of same thing is here. You need to give yourself the space and freedom to let your voice come out. But the challenge is, how do you do this in a judgment-free space to find your voice? And so my suggestion for this one is kind of something we just talked about a little bit. So my challenge for you is that you are going to write the same paragraph, same little chunk of stuff 3 times. I want you to write it just how your brain would write it now. Just go and write it. And again, these are messy, these are ugly, it doesn't matter. You're not sharing this with anybody. You're not going back and editing it right now. So you're just going to write it as you usually would. Then I want you to pick a favorite author of yours and think about how they write. I want you to rewrite that paragraph mimicking your favorite author. All right? And then your final time, I want you to give yourself total freedom to break the rules. It can sound weird. It can just sound whatever. Just play in that draft and be like, all right, I liked maybe these elements from how I wrote it here. And I kind of like these elements from how I wrote it here. Or I didn't like anything from how I wrote it there. And I'm going to write it in a totally different style. So once you've done those, I want you to read the 3 of them aloud and see what feels like home to you. Like, what just feels good in you about those. And it doesn't have to be the whole thing. It could just be a word, a sentence, kind of the overall tone. Just see what out of that you enjoyed and felt like you. And then just start keeping that in a notebook of like your voice discovery notebook, and just jot it down like a style sheet that like an editor would create for you. And then you can always go back and refer to those when you kind of are in those moments of, I don't know if this sounds like me. I don't know if that's me. Go back and be like, oh yeah, this is what I enjoy and that's how I like to write. Let me just push this aside and rewrite it like me. And
I will
eventually
add,
you will find your voice.
yeah, and I will add too, like one of the things with this, because there's a little imposter syndrome woven in here as well. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things about it is that fear of copying, right? The fear
Yes.
of being a poser, like an imposter, right? That you're posing as somebody else or stealing from somebody else's art and stuff. And the book recommendation that came to mind as you were reading this one was The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I have it right here. I will show you it. It's a beautiful book. It's on my top shelf of my favorite books, so easily accessible. So this is The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and in it he talks about like the process of creation for art in general, but also that all art is inspired by other art. Everything that you read that you're like, "Oh my god, this author is just so amazing, so incredible. They're so revolutionary in their stuff." And they very well might have very revolutionary kind of techniques and stuff, but it's probably from a hodgepodge of other art that they have consumed. That is where it all comes out. And he's got a fantastic story in here about that exact thing. So that's important to remember. All art is just a spark of inspiration for more art. That is the beauty of art. And so keep that in mind whenever you're on this writing journey. And then one of the other things was Stephen King in his book called On Writing. He talked about how the greatest teacher of writing is reading. So if you are such an avid reader that you can identify the tone and style of different authors without even knowing, you are so savvy. You have learned so much about writing already. You are so prepared for this. You have already such a great eye for this that you're going to take to it like a fish to water once you give yourself the opportunity and overcome those mindset hurdles. I find, especially as a book coach, that the majority of our issues that we have in writing are just mindset blocks. They're just mindset hurdles that we have to get over. So that, like, just shifting your perspective on this whole, thing that you might identify as a hurdle of like you don't know your own voice, that you actually know a lot of voices, that you're able to identify the tone, and it's just about honing in on what feels right to you. And so that I love that exercise. Great
Awesome.
exercise.
So I guess to kind of just wrap it up here is to just realize that you don't need to change who you are as a writer. Only you can write the way that you are going to write. It's just learning to work with yourself instead of against yourself and realizing that every strength has that shadow side. And it's all about learning to turn up and down the different sides of your personality to feed your creativity and see where the strengths are, and to know when that shadow side's getting turned up a little bit too much and
Hmm.
it's getting in the way, and just kind of doing that course correction and maybe taking notes from some of the other personality traits on here and being willing to play with it. And I think that is where you're going to have these magical moments and being able to harness all of the beautiful benefits of your writing personality, because all of them are beautiful and wonderful and are capable of writing the books that they want to write. It's just learning how to get both of those sides in balance and playing well together.
Yeah, like having a friend hits 11:11. I just felt like I wanted to note that.
Oh.
I don't know. I know that it's not necessarily 11:11 to you listeners, but I just needed to note it for some reason. So here's your sign. I don't fucking know. But like having you as my writer buddy, like alongside me while I'm in the going through this whole fiction writing process, it's like so out of my comfort zone originally, has helped me to balance my issues, that I have with my archetype, right? Because it was I had tried to write my own work so many times before, and then the shiny object syndrome comes in, or the creative spark fizzles out, and then it dies and it doesn't get completed. I have a completed story. I'm just adding to it now and polishing it up now and stuff, but I have a completed story, and I can attribute so much of that to you as, giving me that structure and encouragement, and when I'm needing some advice, having that advice and stuff, because your archetype is my opposite. So
Yeah.
your pros, easily balance out my cons, if that makes sense.
It does, and vice versa for
Yeah.
me as well. Like your little things like have given me so much creative inspiration. So yes, if you guys want to take the test, if you want to read through all the personality types, I will have a link in the show notes below. You can also go to bookboundjourney.com/writer personality, and you'll be able to get the PDF there and take the test for yourself. And I would love to hear from you what your personality is and what you kind of learned about yourself as you went through this process. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah. So exciting. I hope you all love this and take the quiz.
All right.
Join
We'll
our
see you next
newsletters
time.
also.
Yes, yes. Do all the things in the show notes. Have a good one and go discover your personality and do some writing because you are a writer.